Aston Martin seems to be heading towards a bold new future. And today is a very exciting day because for the first time we're about to see what might be considered the linchpin of its future road car lineup. This is the new Aston Martin Vantage.
First impression is just how much like the DB10 from James Bond this looks like, but better somehow. I always thought that dipped down too much to the front, whereas this, it just looks so perfectly balanced. If ever a car screamed 50-50 weight distribution, this is it. It's so sleek. I love the fact that although there's obviously the front diffuser and then these here alleviating pressure from the front arches and the rear diffuser, over the top it's just a wonderfully clean line with a little flick up at the rear. It's just gorgeous. It looks so compact as well, and it's aggressive, much more so than I think any recent Aston Martin I can remember, even the special editions. There's just something about the face and the proportions. It's beautiful.
Under the bonnet is an alloy 4-litre twin-turbo V8 set well back in the chassis to give that mid-front-engined layout. It puts out 503 brake horsepower at 6,000 RPM and 505 pounds-foot of torque between 2,000 RPM and 5,000 RPM. The fundamentals of the engine, as I'm sure you're aware, originally hail from AMG, but that is no bad thing, as anyone that's heard or driven one of the German Mark's cars with this power plant knows. This is a tremendous V8, possibly the best of the current breed, with terrific response and a glorious soundtrack. 0 to 62 miles an hour is dispatched in 3.7 seconds, and the Vantage's top speed is 195 miles an hour. But while straight line figures are important, arguably the handling is even more integral to this car, for it's in bends on road and track, and it must entertain like a yodeling goat with access to a selection of lit fireworks.
I want to talk about the chassis and the suspension, but whilst we're around the back of the car, there are a couple of details here. The way this light bar follows the rear up here, I think is absolutely beautiful. And I love the fact that the exhausts, there's no fake endings to those, they're proper bits of metal. The chassis is the bonded aluminium structure that we've become used to, but the suspension, we've got double wishbones at the front as before, but now instead of the double wishbones at the rear, we've got a multi-link setup, anti-roll bars front and rear as before. The wheels, well, they're 20 inches all round. We've got 400mm steel brake discs hiding behind the front wheels. The tyres are Pirelli P0s that have been designed specifically for this car, 255s at the front, 295s at the rear. Also on the rear axle, for the first time, we've got an e-diff, or electronic differential.
Carfection was lucky enough to sit in the passenger seat of a prototype during ESP testing in Sweden earlier this year. It gave us a glimpse of the dynamics of the new car, and the signs were very promising indeed. The car was what's known as an M1 mule, so as well as the camouflage, it was disguised by DB11 lights. But underneath it was clear that this is a very different car to the big GT. It is 100mm shorter in wheelbase, 230mm shorter overall, and Matt Becker and his team were tasked with engineering it to be a real driver's car. And while this means they needed to make it responsive and agile, there was agreement that it shouldn't be a car that was just about the numbers, so they also wanted to make it playful, tuning things like that new e-diff so that it was fun, progressive and easy to slide. And yes, we did hear suggestions that it might be available with a manual gearbox at some point in the future. Anyway, back to the warm studio. Open up the hatchback boot and there is a surprising amount of space given the car's compact look. Aston will of course sell you a set of matching luggage if you wish to make the most of it. The interior is beautifully trimmed with intricately stitched and sumptuously soft leather, as you would expect. But what does it feel like to sit in? The first thing that you notice when you get into the car, and this is absolutely crucial, is how low the seating position is. The Vantage has always had this sort of quite high dash, but in this you just feel absolutely perfectly placed. You're in the right position, you get the right feeling from it straight away for a sports car. This sort of waistline is quite high up here. The steering wheel is smaller than in the DB11, but it feels nice to hold. 2.4 turns lock to lock, and obviously unlike the old Vantage to be expected, this is now electrically power assisted.
We've got different modes here for the dampers, and then you've got Sport, Sport Plus and Track on the different setups for the car. The paddles behind here, much more positive action than in the DB11. It's the 8-speed ZF gearbox, which is, I think, going to be crucial to how this car differentiates from the old one, because it's a much slicker gearbox for a start, and yeah, it should be very, very good indeed. In this centre console here, we've obviously got the Mercedes electronics, which I still think is a very good thing. You want to be able to reliably navigate your way across Europe. But the way all the buttons have been laid out is slightly different. So we've got the recognisable glass buttons for P, R, N, D, and then the big engine stop-start in the middle. We've also got these toggle switches up here for mainly the climate controls and that sort of thing, and then the other buttons ranged down here. And it's all very compact and neat. I like it.
When the new Vantage goes on sale, it will cost just over £120,000 in the UK, €154,000 in Europe, and a smidgen under $150,000 in America. That puts it in direct competition with cars such as the AMG GT and Audi's R8, although inevitably it will be compared to Porsche's 911 as well. On paper, it certainly has the credentials to compete, and the achingly aggressive sports car looks bode extremely well for the handling. We will only know for sure when we get to press this button in a few months' time.